Have you ever heard a song and felt its lyrics spoke directly to your soul? On today's Haunted Songs, we tell the chilling story of an evil serial who felt his fate was inextricably linked to the lyrics of a Pink Floyd song. But I'm curious, how many of you know you're Pink Floyd? I myself hadn't heard the song, and there's a reason, and we'll get into it. But before we explore the song and the cave, comment what Pink Floyd song you think might haunt a serial killer. Unless you know this case already, then don't cheat, you cheater. Just kidding. Let's just get started.
From this cold climate where I need a puffer jacket to this warm, sunny climate here in the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Honduras in 1978. Silas Boston is sailing with his two sons, Russell and Vince, aged 12 and 13. It's a sweet scene between father and sons, or is it? On closer inspection, one would see the tension. Silas Boston has just two innocent people, and he confesses to his sons, to their horror, many more unalivings. But he will never be tried for any of them. He's not only used his sons to commit this heinous act, but also to portray this vision to lure a very kind couple named Peta Framton and Chris Farmer. Peta is a lawyer and Chris is a doctor. They're childhood sweethearts, and they're in Central America for an adventure. But Chris is also using his skills as a doctor to help those in need. That's what makes these murders even more tragic, is how good these people are. The couple meet Silas Boston in a bar in Belize, and he's very charming, and he charms them into paying him to take them to Honduras on his fishing boat called the Justin B. They felt safe with a guy who has two sons. That seems safe, and they think, what the hell? They're here on an adventure and to have fun. It starts out okay. In fact, when the Justin B stops at ports, Peta sends letters home. Here's Chris with Silas's two sons. From this picture, you would never know that Silas would slowly rain terror over the couple over the next 3 weeks. The book Dead in the Water actually has the whole story. I'll leave it linked down below. But Silas is a mean drunk. Let's face it, a psychotic drunk. And during a drunken rampage, he begins beating his son, and Chris has to protect him from his own father. This infuriates Silas. Silas forces his sons to participate and watch as Silas ties up Peta and Chris, tortures them, and eventually throws them overboard alive, tied to an old engine. And I can't even imagine how terrifying that must have been. And after they're gone, he looks at his sons and he says, "You're next." And then it's just him and his sons, quiet on the water, alone on the Justin B. After that, he sails like nothing's happened. And the boys, they're terrified. Silas helps himself to the couple's belongings, including Chris's collection of music, his boombox and tapes. Chris was into yacht rock before yacht rock was yacht rock, and Silas enjoys his music like nothing's happened. According to his sons, one album Silas Dwayne Boston stole from his victim and loved was Supertramp. And I know Princess Diana was a huge fan of Supertramp, according to her son, Prince Henry. Supertramp fans apparently are pretty wide-ranging, everyone from a princess to a serial killer. But the song Silas most liked was a song called Crime of the Century, which I learned more about after I filmed, so we'll talk more about that a little later. It was all good until one day the weather turns bad. It's terrible, and the boat almost tips over. The boombox falls into the water, and Silas is like, go get it, but it's too late. Silas is convinced this is Chris taking his boombox back from the grave, and the song playing at the time is Dogs by Pink Floyd. Did you guess right? Is that the song you guessed? Possibly it was dawning on Silas the significance of the lyrics. After that, Silas was convinced that the lyrics were his fate, and he would get very upset if Dogs ever came on. These stories are known because his sons actually survived. Even though they lived in abject fear of him, they would eventually tell what happened. On that same Central American vacation, they witnessed 2 other tourists unalived. We'll talk about how Silas got caught in a moment, because someone was looking for Silas, and his fear of the song Dogs turned out to be warranted. But let's look at the lyrics first. These are kind of beautiful chords. Oh my God, you guys. All right, so I'm listening right now to Animals for the first time. I was just going to listen to like a little bit of it. I'm just sitting here and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And I ended up listening to most of this album sitting here. This is not a reaction, so I won't play all of that. But I don't know why I'm surprised, because, obviously Pink Floyd are incredibly talented. I've had a weird thing with Pink Floyd in general. Maybe I should just explain. When I was a little kid, my stepdad used to babysit me, and I don't know if I was being bad or what happened, and for some weird reason, he would take me to a graveyard late at night, blast Pink Floyd music in the car, and then just run out of the car and run off and just leave me alone in the graveyard by myself. I mean, I'm 4 years old. What a weird guy. I think probably any music would be creepy in a graveyard this late at night. But Pink Floyd does have some creepy songs. I don't even remember what songs in particular. But it left me with like a fear of Pink Floyd. But Animals is kind of a double whammy, because we also, at the time, we lived in Martinez, California, near a refinery. And the refinery used to remind me so much of the cover of Dogs. See, they kind of look a little similar. Maybe not as similar as I remembered, but like just looking at the covers now, but still kind of. I used to also be in prog rock bands, and 2 prog rock bands. As you can imagine, a lot of the bandmates were into Pink Floyd. Quelle surprise. So they slowly started getting me not so scared of Pink Floyd, and I've learned to kind of appreciate their music. But so I'm sitting here listening to Dogs and I'm like going, God, I was really missing out. Yeah, so these lyrics in the beginning, as I was listening, it kind of like stood out to me. You got to be crazy. You got to have a real need. You got to sleep on your toes. And when you're on the street, you got to be able to pick out the easy meat with your eyes closed. My God, I've got like goosebumps all over me. I don't know if this is the best way to acclimate myself to make Pink Floyd not so scary.
You've got to strike when the moment is right without thinking.
And after a while, you can work on points for style, like the club tie and the firm handshake, a certain look in the eye and an easy smile. You have to be trusted by the people that you lie to, so that when they turn their backs on you, you'll get the chance to put the knife in. Oh my God, you guys, I got chills. I really do.
Get the chance to put the knife in.
But this is the part I think is the most pertinent. You got to keep one eye looking over your shoulder. You know it's going to get harder and harder and harder as you get older. And in the end, you'll pack up and fly down south. Hide your head in the sand, just another sad old man, all alone, dying of cancer.
All alone, dying of cancer.
And yes, I think this is the most pertinent part to Silas Boston, and the part I think he was probably the scaredest of, and actually really did foretell his future. Because this was Silas Boston at the end of his life. So yes, Silas continued unaliving, R-wording. In fact, police at the end of his life, they thought he was the Golden State Killer because their MO was so similar. But of course, that ended up being somebody else. But like I said, his sons did survive, and he ended up being a forgotten old man because, of course, they didn't want anything to do with him. Very, very ill at the end of his life, and all his organs were failing. I'm not sure if he actually had cancer, but he was living in a nursing home in Eureka. That's where he was at the end of his life. And he was a sad, old, lonely man. And his loneliness ended up being his undoing. Because Chris's family, his mother and father, in particular his sister, this is her right here. This is Penny Farmer. She spent most of her life looking for.
Pretty early on, Peta and Chris's bodies were found off the coast of Guatemala. Because Guatemalan police at the time were not very helpful, Chris and Peta's family were left with so many unanswered questions. Because Peta had sent letters home, everyone was suspicious of Silas.
A couple of years earlier, having complained of having no friends and no one to see him, a carer set up a Facebook page for him. The carer could be forgiven for thinking, who would be looking for this sad old man anyway? Silas felt the same, but like I said, Penny was looking for him.
And Penny refused to let it go. She had constantly searched for Silas online, and one day when she's searching on Facebook, his name pops up.
And she messages him. He didn't reply immediately, but eventually she draws him out with trickery. And she's actually the one who wrote that book I told you about earlier. It's really pretty cool how it happened. She even eventually meets with the sons as well. And by this point, they were racked with guilt. They did kind of become fine men, though, because I think they just were so hell-bent on not becoming their father. But the police was already opening up a case into Silas Boston's disappearance of his third wife, who was the boy's mother. And according to the sons, it was an open secret that he had actually murdered their mother. He confessed that to them. So insane. But essentially, his loneliness ended up getting him captured in the end, and they do arrest him. The only thing is that his organs were failing, and so he refuses treatment. So he dies pretty soon after he's arrested, which was very disappointing for Penny because she really wanted to see him tried for Chris and Peta's murders. But it is kind of a poetic justice that he feared the lyrics of that Pink Floyd song his whole life, and it's almost exactly what ended up happening to him. There is a justice in that.
Earlier, we discussed Silas's liking of Supertramp's Crime of the Century. My focus was more on Dogs, so I didn't realize how similar the two songs are. Both are about being a shark in business. Dogs having the metaphor of a killer in business, which Silas took literally. But the big difference between the songs is that Crime of the Century doesn't explore the consequences as explicitly. Silas should not have been allowed to live his life, the life he stole from so many others, and no one knows exactly how many people he murdered. It is some comfort to know that what he feared came true, and he at least paid that price.
Russell and Penny ended up becoming sort of friendly, and they ended up meeting, and there was kind of a closure in them meeting each other. Russell had a lot of guilt because Russell felt that if Chris hadn't protected him, that none of this would have happened to Chris and Peta. So like I said, he lived most of his life with so much guilt. But meeting Penny ended up being real closure for him. This was such a bizarre story, but in a way,
this has really reframed my weird history and changed my perspective on Pink Floyd.
I don't know, something about their insight, but I look forward to hearing more now in a way that I never have. What do you think I should listen to next? If you'd like to see another video, there'll be one right here. Or you can check out my Reacumentary playlist down here. Or you can subscribe to me right here if you feel so inclined. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope I get to see you next time. Popcorn Philosopher over and out. I'm scared of this one.